Hi everybody, this is Angelique Sung from Let Love Come to You with Marina Pearson, one of our relationship experts on a very important subject. And tell us, Marina, what is the subject that we discuss for an hour and what can people look forward to when they're going to listen to our interview?
So the subject that we discuss is, S.H.I.F.T really, which is the model that I've created around letting go of your ex. So the actual program and the workbook and the audio that I've created is called Goodbye Mr. X, the 7 Steps to Moving On. And what we've discussed is what are the key things that keeps women stuck in the pain, what keeps them struggling from moving on. But also what we discussed was the what are the steps you need to take to get yourself out of the stuckness so that you can actually take steps towards your future. There are key things that we do as women that will definitely keep us stuck in the pain and the anger and the resentment and the struggle, which really at the end of the day doesn't need to happen necessarily. But we do it because we don't know of any other way to do it. And what I've come up with are these key things that will effectively allow us to move on and to create a different relationship destiny for ourselves.
And I interviewed you, and I thought what I found was that it was such a profound program, and that actually the things that you were tackling, the 7 steps that you were tackling, were such unconscious, automatic ways of women to actually get our needs met through love, through compassion, through sometimes being the victim, through blaming and making a situation wrong, that actually keep us stuck. And so I found it a very revealing program in terms of, looking at the things that I might have done wrong and might still be doing wrong in certain situations, which keeps me actually in a place where I am still disempowered to move on and to actually open my heart and open my space to maybe a total different type of relationship, if that is what we want, of course.
Sure.
Yeah. So I know your product is just for women. Do you think that there is a fundamental difference between how men and women deal with these issues of letting go of the past?
That's such a great question, Angelique. And I've spoken to a few men about this. And what I found is that men deal with emotions differently. They've actually done research on this, that at any point a man wants to, they put them, a man and a woman, up in an MRI scan. And the minute that the scientists or the people that were doing the research asked either both of them to talk about their emotions, the scan showed what showed up was really interesting. It showed that the woman's level of part of her brain that gets stimulated was active, and the man's wasn't at all.
What?
So, his testosterone goes right down when he has to talk about his emotions, and doesn't really want to. So the big difference here I found is not only do women want to talk about their emotions, they want to talk things out. They want to, it's like when we engage in a meeting.
Yeah.
When I engage in a meeting with a man, it's very linear.
Yeah.
This point A, B, C, D, and E, and this is basically the outcome.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm engaging in a conversation with a woman in a meeting, what usually happens is, we kind of talk about, what's going on in our lives first, and we build that rapport, and it's a very different way of relating, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The same is true for anything that comes with, breaking up. Now, I'm speaking from a very generalistic point of view, because of course there are men that are much more in touch with their feelings, who are much more in touch with their feminine, who will probably feel that they are going through just as much of a breakdown as a woman would.
Yeah.
However, intrinsically, in general, women want to talk, men shut down and they want to walk away, and they compartmentalize. So it's like, that's done now, I'm moving on. Whereas women don't necessarily have that capacity to go, right, I'm moving on now. We want to explore it. We ask the questions, why this,
We ruminate. Yeah.
Ruminate. Whereas men,
Analysis paralysis. We stay stuck. It's like we're caught in this bubble of the past relationship, trying to understand it instead of actually maybe even, and sometimes even when we think we're in therapy or we're doing the work to get over it, there's still some of the steps that we don't take to actually break what I would call the patterns that have caused the relationship to end or to not work in the first place.
exactly. So I've always said to my ladies, focus on what you can change, not on what you can't. So the brain just wants to know, wants to know, wants to know. And if we look at, okay, we won't necessarily know why he did what he did, but you can certainly concentrate on yourself and go, okay, well, it's better if I could have done this way, or I could have done it that way, and I'm going to learn for the next time. But you're absolutely right. We do ruminate, and unless we actually really focus on moving on and doing so in a healthy way,
Yeah.
then it can come to repeat again in the future.
Yeah. Actually, listening to this, it reminds me of all the painful past,
Oh no.
breakups that I had. No, 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 but in a good way, because I am so not there right now. But I can, I
Yeah.
totally resonate to the women who was like, 6 months later was still thinking, why did it happen? What could I have done differently? Are we still getting back together? It's the inability to move on in a way.
I call
And
it the yo-yo syndrome.
yeah, and it's so painful, and to see the man totally moving on and almost blaming yourself, thinking that you're a stupid, low self-esteem person, whereas sometimes it's just our neurochemistry is different.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
not only that, but also the fact is that then as women we take it on and we go, oh my god, he never cared about me, and he's
Yeah.
moved on, and how come he's moved on, and he's moved on, and I haven't, and he didn't care, and he didn't care. Well, the fact is he probably did care, but he's dealt with this in a very different way.
Yeah.
And we're all, I imagine each and every one of us like a country, right? So let's just, for example, I'm half Spanish, and
Yes.
but I have that English side in me.
Yeah.
Um, there's no point coming to the UK expecting the UK to have dinner at 10 o'clock in the evening.
No. Yes,
Or
I know the
going to
Spanish
rugby.
lifestyle, dinner at
Yeah,
midnight. So
yeah.
wonderful.
There's no, but there's and the thing is that we have dinner earlier here based upon our culture, based upon the weather usually.
Yeah.
And the same is true in Spain. So what do I really mean with this? Well, it's to do with the fact that each of us is like a different country. We have different customs, we have different way of doing things, we have different education, we have a different way of being, and even more so for a man and a woman. So it's really interesting that when we as women are very hurt, we tend to want to find the answers, and we go into the assumption phase that actually it's got nothing to do with us half the time. In
Yeah.
fact, probably all of the time. It has everything to do with the fact that how they deal with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But your program is really about, and the interview we have is actually really looking at all the unconscious patterns that might have to do with the neurochemistry. I mean, blame the neurochemistry or the way that our hormones work and our way the way our brains work, on how we process loss, how we process things that aren't going the way that we want to. And it's actually almost as if your program is providing a bridge for people to process these things differently, especially if they're women. When they're dealing with loss, they're dealing with patterns that might go back for years and years to, unhealthy dynamics and, parents' relationships or whatever they've gone through before. I think this is a very, very important subject, because ultimately, if you don't do this work, you can find 3 or 5 or 10 new partners that might be very, very amazing, but you might still bring in, the same patterns and dynamics. And I can see that. I can see how valuable this work is. So I invite everybody, if you want to hear this interview with Marina, sign up for the summit and listen to our interview when it airs. I enjoyed it, Marina, although it was not so much a fun topic, but what I could see is that it clears out a lot of things that are ultimately not worth hanging on to. And the way that you explained it, I was really impressed because I know that you have lived this and you have implemented this with your client, and it totally made sense, your program. And even to me, who reads a lot of books and have interviewed so many people on this topic, there were some nuggets in your program that are quite, they're quite, what is it, surprising, let's say.
What's amazing to me, Angelique, actually, is I've done some research on this, and I've looked out there to see kind of online courses for heartbreak, and and what I found really fascinating is that there's really nothing, hardly, if anything.
Yeah.
There's lots of soulmate courses.
Yeah.
They deal with this topic at the beginning, but very, very briefly.
Superficially.
Quite superficially, yeah. But nothing goes into real depth.
Yeah.
Because unless you really go in deep, the results are just not going to be the same. And looking for a soulmate is not, it's going to be like attracting a Ford Fiesta versus a Ferrari,
Versus a what? Sorry, which
Ferrari.
car? Ferrari. Oh, okay. We're not trying to bash any brands here, but it's more about it's more about the generic we're talking about in symbols here. No, I think there's another better metaphor. I think the metaphor is, because in law of attraction especially, we talk about you have to become the person that you want to attract, or you have to be very similar in vibration. But a lot of the time when we don't do the work, what happens is we still feel like an ugly duckling and we pretend we're a swan. And then, of course, when we meet the swan, we still know that we're an ugly duckling because we haven't really done that inner work to reassess ourselves. And then, of course, the ugly duckling on a date with the swan, we just start confirming all these, the limiting beliefs that we already have, and then we do all these little tricks to get this partner to validate us because we feel so little, not deserving of love, and so
there are lots of opportunities you may be missing out on. And you may even have limiting beliefs around the fact that you're not deserving of that particular person. That comes in, shows up, or doesn't even come in and show up because there is a belief that all of the good guys are taken. But it's so key. It's so key that in order to really create the relationship that you want for the future, that you focus on healing your past. I mean, I can't. If there's one thing that for anybody to take away from this is focus on healing your past. Take the time to do so. It's not a race, and it's
not a quick fix.
No, take the time, to use this time to heal. I think heartbreak, like when we get sick, happens when our body is just saying, it's time for us to really listen to what's going on inside of us. I ignored it time and time again, and I tell you, finally, when I decided to listen to my body, take the time, it has paid off tenfold. So I'm now engaged and I have an incredible partner.
I know that you have an incredible partner, and it's lovely to see both of you, and it's so beautiful to see how he is very different from you as well, and he is such a bloke. He is such a man. And probably if you hadn't done the work, you would have wished that he was different, because why isn't he more like this and this and this? But so beautiful. I just love him. Of course, don't get me wrong. Of course, there are things that we get annoyed by, but there is an intrinsic knowingness that he is just beautiful the way he is. And I personally, I love the work of Marina because she also does a lot of the shadow work in a very balanced way. And